This video has been made with the purpose of education and awareness of real crimes, and there is no disrespect intended to anyone. This is to help promote truth and justice for anyone who has been a victim of crime. What I'm about to report is what I have researched online, and I will welcome any corrections should they be required. Hello there, little Berry True Crime fans. It's Eri Berry here. Just move the mic a bit closer. Ever so sorry if you pick up on the fan. You'll probably see it here in the I think this turns out to be the bottom, your bottom right, hand corner. It's fucking hot still. It's just ridiculously hot. And you know what? I do apologize, especially with the last video, because you could hear seagulls that I didn't know the sound would carry through. But my window is open. The fan is going. A kitten is right by my feet, and I'm afraid there is going to be some background noise, but the whole purpose of these videos is to give you a report of the case, and I'm going to do that as professionally as I possibly can. But unfortunately, when you don't really have a studio that is set up with air conditioning and no pets, you have to make do with what you have. And my hair is an absolute mess. I've had to go for the messy bun, because no matter how much you try and style your hair in this blistering heat, it just ends up a mess. We're going to talk today about a case, another one of the ones covered by JCS Criminal Psychology. I could have done this as a response, as a reaction to the interrogation, but for me, it wasn't right to react to the interrogation of the perpetrator without focusing on the victim in this case. It infuriated me how justice was so slow. This person, despite the fact that what they did was caught on CCTV, and it was obvious that it wasn't what he was trying to say that it was, he still tried to argue self-defense, stand your ground, whatever you call it. So today we're going to talk about the murder of Markeis McGlockton. This murder took place in Clearwater in Florida. Markeis Dion McGlockton was actually, I don't know if he was actually born in Clearwater or just grew up there, but he did spend some time at another place in Florida called St. Petersburg, not to be confused with the Russian St. Petersburg. But basically he was Florida born and raised. This is an area he was very familiar with. He knew, what his rights were. He was a good man. He did really well. He dropped out of high school. He didn't pursue a college education, but he worked really, really hard. He was born in March 1990, and when he was 20 years old, he met a young woman called Britany Jacobs, and she described their relationship as just amazing, wonderful. They were best friends, they were soulmates, they were made for each other. Life partners. They seriously, these two people couldn't be better matched. They love the bones of each other. They really, really did. And a few years into their relationship, Britany gave birth to their first child, a little boy. And then a few years later, they had a daughter and then another son. At the time of his murder, Markeis and Britany had been together 9 years. So I suppose you could say they were common law. I don't think common law is a thing anymore, but for all intents and purposes, they were life partners. They were going to spend the rest of their lives together. They had 3 kids, and Britany described him as an amazing dad. Britany worked as a nursing assistant, so she was the main breadwinner. Markeis worked some shifts, I believe, at a store, so he did bring some money in, but most of the time he looked after their children. And Markeis did that. He was a dedicated father. He absolutely loved his children, and he was fiercely protective of them. On the 19th of July in 2018, Markeis picked up Britany from her place of work, and with their 3 children in their car, they drove to a store just to buy a few snacks and things. Along the journey to the store, Britany took over driving, and this is because Markeis planned on going into the shop himself, with Britany remaining in the car with the kids. They were going to the Circle A food store, and as Britany pulled in, Markeis got out of the car with his 5-year-old son and entered the store. A few people came and went, and just a few moments after Britany parked the car, another car pulled into the car park. This particular car was, I believe it was a truck. I'm not sure what type of truck, but this car parked perpendicular to Britany. So Britany was angled, say, straight on, and this car came in at the side and was a couple of meters away from her car. The driver, Michael Drejka, got out and immediately walked over to Britany's car. He didn't get too close, but he appeared to be circling the car. The CCTV footage shows that. It's not clear what he was saying to her because the camera was too far away. You can't actually hear or lip read. But there was basically a verbal back and forth. Michael Drejka was upset that Britany had parked in a disabled parking space when he didn't feel that she should be there. So Michael Drejka was taking it upon himself to police this car park when he, like Britany and like Markeis, was just a customer. He didn't go into the store to let them know. He didn't call the police to let them know. He took it upon himself to confront her with 3 children in the car. Well, 2 in the car at this point, a 3-year-old daughter and a 9-month-old son. Markeis and their 5-year-old son were in the store. At one point, Britany got out of the car. Michael Drejka didn't go too close to her, but he did start to approach her, so he was about a foot or so away. At this point, Markeis walked out of the store. His son wasn't with him. He approached Michael and immediately pushed him, and I mean pushed him, to the point that Michael fell to the ground on his right side. Michael didn't get up. Britany backed up against the car. Markeis did not approach Michael. He actually started to walk backwards. But pretty much as soon as Michael propped himself up, a split second after hitting the ground, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a gun. He aimed it at Markeis's chest. 2 seconds later, Michael Drejka shot Markeis McGlockton in the chest. Everybody around was understandably shocked and couldn't take in what was going on, and Michael Drejka stayed on the ground. Britany was in such shock she didn't know what to do. Markeis clutched his chest and he ran into the convenience store. His 5-year-old saw him and understandably didn't know what was going on, and Markeis collapsed in front of his son. The bullet had entered his lungs and heart. This was at 3:30 in the afternoon. The ambulance was called, he was taken to hospital, but he died less than an hour after this shot. Michael Drejka and Markeis McGlockton had been to this convenience store a number of times, and the owner of the store knew them both as regular customers. Michael Drejka had been confrontational with people before. He did have a license for his weapon to carry a concealed weapon. But get this, despite him even admitting to shooting Markeis McGlockton, despite it being on CCTV, but despite witnesses, he was not arrested for over 3 weeks. And his charge was not one of murder, but manslaughter. Michael Drejka claimed to be defending himself. He said that when Markeis approached and pushed him, there was no verbal back and forth between them. Markeis didn't say anything to him, he didn't say anything to Markeis. And he claimed that Markeis was coming at him. He felt that his life was in danger. I mean, if your life is in danger, if it's yours or the other person's, and you have a firearm and you have to shoot to defend yourself, then fine. But a lot of people, when they shoot to defend themselves, it's to incapacitate the assailant, not to shoot them dead, not to shoot to kill. Michael Drejka aimed the gun at Markeis's chest. He didn't use the gun to say, look, I have a gun here, back off. Markeis was already backing off. He said to the police in his interrogation, which was the same day, although he wasn't arrested, he said that he didn't look at Markeis's face. He said he could see the hips moving and the feet moving towards him. The CCTV footage shows the complete opposite. Markeis was backing off, particularly when he saw what Michael was doing. He was pulling a gun. If you back off when someone has a gun, you don't shoot them. If they're backing off, they're backing off. If they come at you, fine, you may shoot to wound, to incapacitate, to defend yourself. And he said he didn't see Markeis's face, he didn't focus on anything from the hips upwards, but he was aiming the gun at Markeis's chest. But Michael Drejka claimed self-defense. The stand your ground law in Florida was, I believe, at one point invoked by his defense team, saying that he was exercising his rights to stand his ground. But the stand your ground law is very unfair and biased. And the lawyers for Markeis's family, I believe quite justifiably, pointed out that stand your ground can be used with racial bias. What if it had been Markeis that had shot Michael? Michael's a white man. Markeis is a black man. If it had been reversed, Markeis would have been arrested for murder, not arrested weeks later on a charge of manslaughter. Now, I am absolutely baffled as to why it was manslaughter. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't an accidental shooting. It wasn't a defensive, maybe slightly irrational murder or a wound shoot that unintentionally killed someone. When you shoot someone in the chest, that's where their heart is. And when Michael was told by the police later that day that Markeis had died, do you know what he said to police? He said, "Thank you." He said he thanked the officers for telling him, for informing him, but he showed no remorse or regret. Those two children, the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old, were probably too young, or definitely the 9-month-old, were too young to know what was going on. But this 5-year-old boy saw his father collapse in front of him. He didn't see him get shot, but he saw him collapse. And Britany witnessed it all. Markeis's family, they put together a GoFundMe page to get some financial support for Britany because she's now going to have to raise these 3 kids. 4 to 5 months after Markeis's murder, she found out that she was pregnant. She had been, obviously at the time of the shooting, hadn't known it, but she gave birth to another little boy a few months later. So she is now a mother of 4. A single mother of 4, having lost her soulmate. Her 5-year-old asks, "When is daddy coming home?" because he doesn't understand. The baby she was carrying, the 9-month-old, and maybe even the 3-year-old, won't remember their father visually. She's going to have to tell them what a wonderful man their father was, and that he was defending their honor. A lot of people have argued that Markeis's actions by coming out and pushing Michael to the floor was over the top. And say, for example, it hadn't resulted in a shooting. You could probably say that pushing somebody with that much force that they fall to the ground just because they're arguing with your other half, they're not actually using force themselves, may have been a bit over the top. I don't care. I don't care. That does not give anyone the grounds to shoot someone, especially someone who is about a meter or 2 away from you and they're backing away. You don't just shoot them in the chest. And Michael didn't show any shock. That CCTV footage doesn't show any shock or any reaction from him. His defense team said that, oh, the CCTV footage it's not good, it's a bit grainy, it may not show exactly what was said. No, it's very clear. I don't care how grainy it is, it blatantly shows Markeis backing up. And they were saying, well, from Michael's point of view on the floor, as Markeis was backing up, he was sort of rocking back. It may have looked to Michael like he was coming forward. I'm sorry, but if someone is backing up, and even if it looks like they're coming forward, he was moving slowly. Unless someone is actively attacking you, you don't shoot. Michael Drejka said that he had never had a confrontation with anyone before. He was a non-confrontational man. But it actually transpired that he had done this a number of times before. The attorneys for Britany and the McGlockton family said they described Michael Drejka as a wannabe cop, a wannabe police officer, a man who felt that it was his duty to make sure that people who weren't disabled didn't park in a disabled space. Now, we have disabled spaces here in the UK, and there have been some things on the news or some programs about people who don't need to park there, who do park there, just because they're running in to grab a pint of milk or whatever. You shouldn't use a disabled parking space if you don't need it. But just because you don't look visually disabled doesn't mean that you're not. Like, for example, my mother, when she was alive, bless her, if I had to take her to do some shopping, she needed a wheelchair, which was in the boot. If I pulled up at a disabled parking space and I got out, some people may think, hang on, she's not disabled, what's she doing? And a few people have had that. But if I then said, hang on, I've got my mother here who is disabled, she needs a wheelchair, which I'm just about to get out. And some people are so quick to jump on it and say you're not disabled. But what if you've got maybe a neurological condition, which means you need more space? What if you've got a behavioral issue that means you are not aware of your surroundings and you could easily knock into someone or something? You may need more space. Or if you've got vertigo, for example, you need more space. There could be many reasons. Do not judge someone. And if someone is parking in a disabled space and you don't think they need to be there, then inform the shop. Tell the police. Whatever. But you don't go and confront them and take it upon yourself to be a vigilante and then go and shoot them. He waited for the police and he did cooperate with them, but I'm just really baffled as to why he wasn't arrested on the spot. He was free to go about his life. And he was actually out on bail before he was finally convicted of manslaughter and was given 20 years in prison. Although Michael said that neither of them said anything to each other, according to Britany, Markeis did say something to Michael. He said, "Stay away from my girl." And I think that is a real testament to Markeis's character. He was willing to defend his wife and his kids. It was put to Drejka that he was acting out of being racist, basically. He denies it. But it makes you wonder that even though no racial slurs were used or any allusions to race were used, what if Markeis had been white? Had he done the same thing? Drejka and his wife were harassed. They received death threats after this. Drejka actually put a sign outside his house saying no comment. Now that may be seen by some as something sarcastic, and to be honest, I think it is. But this was a note to the press, and to anyone who wanted to ask him any questions, he was not going to talk to them. But Michael Drejka said that he did not regret his actions. He would do it again. The only regret he had was what happened as a result, Markeis dying. I'm sorry, but when he was told that Markeis had died, his reaction was, "Thank you for telling me." Makes me fucking angry. A vigil was held for Markeis 2 days after the shooting. There were protests as well. It was just horrible, especially when there are kids involved and kids that were witnesses. And Michael didn't even say, look, he didn't even try and say, "I'm sorry that these little kids will grow up without a dad. I'm sorry that the 5-year-old saw his father dying in front of him. I'm sorry that Britany saw what she did and has now got to live with raising 4 kids, one of which would have never met their dad." And it makes me furious that this is a manslaughter charge. It should be murder. Yes, there may not have been any premeditated, in a sense that he killed Markeis about 5 seconds after Markeis shoved him. But that does show to me at least a few seconds of premeditated murder when he got out his gun and he aimed it at Markeis. He shot to kill. Also, one thing about Michael Drejka's arrest, there had to be a petition. There was a petition for his arrest. I'm sorry, if someone shoots someone, even if it were accidental, even if Markeis had been rushing at him, he should have been arrested on the spot. This shooting had a massive impact on the politics in Florida. There was a huge impact on the stand your ground rule. It was, I don't know if it was overturned, but it was certainly challenged. One thing that the attorneys for Markeis did say, and I completely agree with them, is let the footage speak for itself. You don't have to know much about Markeis's background, even though Michael's background was sketchy in terms that he had been confrontational with people before. The point is, you need to look at the footage for what it actually is. And that, to be honest, is all that's needed, because there's no text messages or internet searches or anything like that. There's no history between these two people. It was a spur of the moment shooting. This footage shows genuinely what happened. And I'm very glad that he was found guilty, but if he'd been charged with murder, I don't know that he would have been found guilty of that, but I'm really surprised it wasn't murder. The allegations against Michael Drejka, I'm just looking on a website at the moment, which shows that in 2012, he confronted an 18-year-old male and driver for stopping at a yellow light, and he threatened them with a gun. He also threatened a female driver and her 3 passengers for driving too slowly. That was in 2012 in Clearwater. Both of them were in Clearwater. And in Palm Harbor, he threatened a mother with 2 children, but not with a gun this time in 2013, for nearly making contact. I've had people nearly make contact with my car before, and all I've gone is beep, you didn't. Whatever. You nearly made contact, but you didn't. It happens. You're driving. Go about your business. Then another one in Clearwater in 2018. So there was a 5-year gap between these 2 allegations. This was just before what happened with Markeis. This was a case of parking in a handicapped space. And again, it was a threat with a gun. So he'd been threatened to use his gun 3 times before that we know of. And on the 4th time that we know of, he uses it and he kills someone. If someone is threatening with a gun, I'm not an expert on American law, but shouldn't their license to carry a concealed weapon be revoked? Because if they're threatening someone with a gun, there's a potential that they could use it, and this is proof because he did use it. If you have a license to carry a gun and it's for self-defense purposes, and then something happens which means that you weren't using it to defend yourself, you were using it to threaten someone who was just driving too slow, nearly making contact, stopping at a yellow light. You know, if you're going to do that, you are a dangerous person. Your license should be revoked. And if he hadn't been carrying a gun, Markeis would still be alive. Markeis's family have said to Drejka that they won't forgive him. And I think quite a lot of that is because Michael has not shown any level of remorse or regret. He's not said sorry. He's not even said, look, oh God, you know, I did act rationally. I did act out of anger. I did want to, I wanted to punish him for pushing me to the floor, and I really regret that now, even though he hasn't even admitted it and then regretted it. He's not regretted it at all. If it's not enough that he threatened people with a gun, the last time he threatened someone, which was the same year in which he killed Markeis McGlockton, it says that he said this person wasn't, quote, lucky I didn't blow his head off. This happened at the same place that Markeis was shot, but this person didn't report it to the police until after Markeis was killed. So that could be one of the reasons why Michael's license hadn't been revoked, or at least been reviewed. This is why it's so important to report these things to the police, because you could be stopping a would-be murderer. This is a quote from Markeis's father, Michael McGlockton, says, "You deserve to die in prison. In the Bible, it says that in order to get into heaven, we must forgive those who trespassed against us. At this point in my life, I am not there yet. And if it just so happens that the Lord chooses to take me before I come to terms with this, then I will see you in hell, where you and I will finish this. Mark my words." Oh, very powerful. Markeis's mother said she didn't hate Drejka, but again said she wouldn't forgive him. She said, "Markeis was loved by so many, and because of you, Michael Drejka, my son is now a memory." Michael Drejka did appeal his sentence, but it was denied. I think he has an absolute blinding cheek to even try, not just appeal, but he went in for a not guilty for manslaughter. He should have taken a plea deal, not just because of a prison sentence, but because that footage was so on point. How can you deny undeniable evidence like that? How can you say your life was at risk when it blatantly shows your life was not at risk? Your memory of that incident may be different, but that doesn't mean that you can use that stand your ground rule. It doesn't mean you can use self-defense. It doesn't mean that you can say you are innocent, especially as he aimed the gun. He actually deliberately aimed the gun at Markeis's chest. And there was about 2 seconds between him pulling out the gun and firing. He had those 2 seconds to go, right, back away. Come near me, turn the gun away, turn near me, and I will put the gun away. And another lawyer has pointed out that Michael Drejka, say for example, he had drawn the gun, but not pointed it at Markeis and just said to him, look, I have a gun, back away. That probably may have been reasonable, as he'd been shoved to the ground quite hard actually. But even then, Markeis wasn't still coming at him before he pulled the gun out. Markeis just wanted him to stay away from his girl. Michael could have just got up and said, look, I'm just talking to her about this disabled place. Yes, an incident could have escalated. But Markeis, he doesn't look to me like someone who he wasn't ready to fight. He just wanted to defend his girlfriend and his family. Also about Drejka's sentencing, he was sentenced to 20 years. Now the maximum sentence for manslaughter is 30 years in Florida state law. He was given 20 because of the fact that he'd cooperated with police. Yes, he cooperated, but he'd lied to the police blatantly, and he tried to dodge his responsibility. I really wouldn't be any good at being a police officer, because I would have just got hold of him, shaken him and said, the footage speaks for itself. Don't try and deny what we can blatantly see. Admit what you've done, because if you admit what you've done, even if what you've done is disgusting, even if you freely say, yeah, I shot him because I was angry with him. Yeah, I did it because I was pissed off. He threw me to the floor, so I thought I'd shoot him. Yeah, that's a horrible thing to say, but it's an honest thing to say. You'd get a lot more respect if you admit it. And that is when people start their forgiveness. And forgiveness is not just for you, for the person they're forgiving. It's for you yourself to let go. And it's hard, really hard, for people to let go and forgive someone who's killed their child, killed their spouse, and these kids. How are they gonna deal with this growing up? If you can, if you are able to in any way, please help Britany and her and Markeis's children any way you can. They're gonna need it. A lot of support more than anything. And they have had support, but nothing can bring Markeis back. Nothing compares to Markeis. Guys, this is another reason why gun laws are just, to me, you know, if I had my way, all guns in the entire world would at once cease to function. All guns, all weapons. We don't need weapons on the streets. Yes, we have the right to defend ourselves, but we don't have to carry weapons. And if people didn't carry weapons, then in most cases we wouldn't have to defend ourselves. I want to leave you with a quote. Now, this is from Russell Brand. Years and years ago, when he was on a show called Big Brother's Big Mouth, there was an argument between people about housemates. And Russell Brand said something which has stuck with me ever since. He said, "Why can't we just all love each other?" That has always stuck with me. Why can't we all love each other? Why do we have to hate each other just because we want to feel special and powerful? And because it fires us up? Yeah, love can fire you up too. Moving on with your life is sometimes the best thing you can do. And don't hate on people. And if you hate them, move on, because life ain't worth it. Why can't we just all love each other? I'll leave you with that. Thank you very, very much for watching. Good night, little berries.